In deep, shadowed forests, down back alleys, and desolate reaches of road, strange encounters echo. This is a haunted world. But there are those who are called to seek these stories out, record and preserve them so that we all might peer more eagerly into the chasm of the unknown. From Ouija board run-ins with foreboding spirits to insidious curses cast by disgruntled employees.
I curse you!
Join us on this episode of Belief Hole as we gather around the campfire with paranormal podcast pioneer and master collector of inexplicable encounters, Jim Harold, to peel back the pages and reveal the hidden horror and true mystery that waits just beyond the firelight.
Conspiracy,
synchronicity,
Sasquatch,
homunculus,
alien races,
Satanism in Hollywood, MK Ultra, Tartaria.
There's like a whole. I've been watching this one guy.
Close the door, Ed.
Jeremy, close your door!
What's the
Inner Earth Disagreements.
Ghost Dad?
I like that movie.
Dogman,
Bohemian Grove,
Feldman.
magicians are demons,
Specters and
spirit
spooks.
summonings, paralysis,
strange disappearances,
Sky whale phenomenon.
alternative history, shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with my mouth.
It's getting dicey out there. Poltergeists.
That's cool.
Anunnaki. What is the moon? Elf towers.
I would never talk about it. That's old.
Y2K. Corrupts.
apocalyptic catastrophe.
Vampire.
Well, hello. Hi,
Hello.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm John.
I'm Chris. And we are the brothers of the Belief Hole. And we are happy to have you on this very special episode of The Hole. Yeah, special indeed. That's right, guys. We're ramping up to Halloween. It's that time of year. And we thought in that vein, in that vibe, we thought we'd have one of the preeminent storytellers in this strange genre that we cover, the paranormal. Yes, that is right. We have on today a special friend of the show, Jim Harold. He's got a new book out, a new collection of stories, True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6. So we're going to have him on today and discuss some of these stories, some fascinating elements around these tales, and we're going to have a good conversation.
Without me.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation with Jim. Jim will be here in John's
Stead.
stead. Can't have that many J's. John, Jeremy, and Jim.
I'll be back at the end though.
Yes, he will. Yeah, so you stick around for that for some discussion. And this is a great interview. I've been a fan of Jim's for a long time. Many of you out there are very familiar with Jim, his work, pioneer of collecting stories and sharing them with the world. So we're very honored to have Jim on deep inside the hole with us. So
Jimmy, come on down.
all right, without further ado, let's welcome Jim. Well, hello. You know, it's almost that time of year. The leaves are turning. The creeps are creeping. And as we inch ever closer to the season of campfire stories and unsettling tales of the unexplained, who better to have on than the Jim Harold of Jim Harold's Campfire? So it is a privilege, my friend. We really do appreciate you taking time.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you both. It's a great honor to be on the show. And you're right. I mean, it is that time of the year, isn't it? It's kind of like our Super Bowl.
Great way to put it.
I don't know if I can say that phrase without getting sued, though. But anyway, it's the big game.
Yes. Yeah, Jim, you've been doing this for, well, I know your Jim Harold's Campfire has been around for your 15-year anniversary this year. Is that right?
Jeez. Yes. Before I started that, I'd started a show called The Paranormal Podcast, which I still do, which is interviews with authors and experts about as much of an expert as you can be on these subjects.
Yeah.
And that's been around since 2005, still going. And as far as I know, that's the longest running paranormal podcast on the internet.
That is awesome.
And then I started Jim Harold's Campfire in 2009. And I think that's probably my most popular show. And I really enjoy doing it. I love speaking with, just everyday folks in every walk of life, different countries. And they just tell their stories very unvarnished and raw and just say, this is what happened to me. And it's a privilege to be a kind of a collector and curator of some of those stories.
Absolutely. You are definitely a fellow collector and archivist of the unexplained, these kind of unexplained stories. And that's the beauty of what we get to do and what you've been doing for so long as kind of a pioneer of this, And I was curious to know if you feel like there's some kind of maybe, well, let's say specifically hauntings, if we're looking with a microscope at the paranormal. With hauntings in particular, do you feel like there is a kind of singular through line, one underlying truth? Or if not, what do you see as kind of the potential causes of, let's say, a haunting?
Well, the funny thing is when I talk about the paranormal, I'm talking about all of it. Ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, all of it. But specifically when it comes to ghosts, it's kind of a microcosm of my general belief system in that when I came into this, like so many people, I'm like, oh, easy. Ghosts are dead people, right? I'm not so sure,
Yeah.
The more that I do this, the more convinced I am that there is a real phenomenon going on, that there is, doesn't mean every story is rooted in something paranormal, but certainly some are, I think. Now, whether paranormal might be something we can understand by science in 4 or 5 centuries, that's open for discussion. But there's something going on that we can't currently explain. Now, what is a ghost? Well, I think there's multiple explanations. So let's rule out hoaxes. Let's rule out people who are just, nice people but mistaken. But let's talk about things where really something might be going on. Yeah, do I think they can be dead people? Yeah, I think they can be dead people, maybe even sentient, who are haunting a place for a particular reason. I also think there's the residual piece.
Right.
I also, and this is something I never considered until I started talking to people about more and more. Sometimes I wonder if a ghost is just a glimpse back in time. And are we somehow interfacing with a previous time? And maybe as much as they're ghosts to us, we're ghosts to them. I've had stories on the Campfire, and I'm sure you both have run into stories, where someone is startled by a ghost, and the ghost is startled by them.
Right. Those are awesome stories.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I believe that there is, there's something to the phenomenon. And I think there are myriad explanations. It does appeal to me that some places tend to be more charged.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can't tell you why, but I think of something, most people think about haunted, for lack of a better term, asylums or things like that, haunted prisons. But I think of something like theaters, which are highly haunted. And it kind of makes sense if you go into the kind of that idea of a place being charged with energy. And you think about a theater where you've got performers who tend to be, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but they tend to be more type A, kind of high-strung individuals.
Yeah.
And, that kind of drama, comedy, the vibes of the audience, the excitement of the audience, you put that into a place, some of these great old theaters and things, and it makes sense that maybe something will pop out on the other end.
Yeah, especially theaters, I feel like there's also that vulnerability. You're on stage, the performance aspect of it,
That's a great point.
Another place, like psychic scars, of course, like the big places like Gettysburg. We did a Gettysburg episode recently, and it had both of those elements, the theater and in Gettysburg. I forget which building it was. Brewer Hall, I believe, used to be something, became something else. Part of the university there, I think. But yeah, definitely certain places. What about, have you ever come across the concept of fear eaters? Or the idea of maybe a parasite, maybe something that is not dead. Well, has never lived. Maybe an interdimensional sort of feeder. This kind of idea, is that something that's ever come across your mind?
I've heard of the idea of it. It kind of reminds me of Colin Robinson and What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. A psychic vampire, yeah.
Exactly. So, I think that could be it. Actually, what it reminds me of even more is if you think of Monsters, Inc.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or Little Monsters with Fred Savage.
Right.
It's the same idea. It's just cartoonized, right?
Right.
So, I think that's a possibility. The thing that I run into more than anything, maybe it's because we've kind of got a reputation for having these stories, I get more doppelganger stories than I ever thought of. One, I'll just share one with you real quickly that I think is very demonstrative of how weird this can be. And I actually think it happened in Ohio somewhere. I actually think I know where it happened, but I'm not going to say because, for privacy reasons.
Right.
But this woman worked at a hospital. She was, I believe, a respiratory therapist, something like that. So one particular morning, she had a patient who needed to test in another part of the hospital. So as they do, they got somebody from transport, a gentleman from transport, who would move this patient in the bed, and she would accompany them both to the testing place, wherever that was. So they went and got in this big elevator, freight-type elevator, where a hospital bed can fit in. And the woman looks across the hall, and there's more of a passenger type elevator. And she sees a woman, and she's like, wow, she's really familiar. And then she looks at this woman, and she realizes she's looking at herself. And the woman on the other end recognizes it, and they're both like looking as the doors close, right?
Oh, wow.
So anyway, well, that's weird enough, but it gets weirder. This woman had to continue to do her job, take the patient for the test, and had various patients throughout the day, and it was a tiring day, right? She's at the end of the day, all day, wondering, what in the world was that all about? I saw myself. So she's standing outside the passenger elevator with a group of people, and they all walk into the elevator. And she, kind of looks up, and she sees the freight elevator across the way. And there is a hospital bed. There is a transport gentleman. And there's a woman. And the woman looking directly at her again is her. She's looking at herself in the other direction of time.
That is crazy.
What do you do in that situation?
I don't know what you do. But what is that? I mean, that seems like more of a time issue to me.
Right? Almost like a premonition doppelganger kind of.
Yeah.
What is the universe doing at that point?
And there's a quote that I know it's a very old quote, but I just recently was reminded of it. And this is kind of like I should probably save this for the end, but people say, well, what have you learned? And do you understand what's behind all this and stuff? Which is a very natural question after doing this for 19 years.
Right.
And my answer is, I believe I've learned that there is something to this stuff, that this stuff is real in some cases. On the other hand, what it is isn't anybody's clue, but I think my thoughts on it are encapsulated by this quote, and I'll get it slightly wrong probably, but the universe isn't only stranger than we imagine. The universe is stranger than we can imagine.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I think that a lot of this is because we're not equipped to see the full range of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're trying, it's like Plato and the allegory of the cave.
Shadows.
We're trying to piece it together and figure it out. And I don't think that we're equipped to do that.
Yeah. It reminds me of, and this is an example I've heard used before and I've used before when it comes to the UFO phenomenon, or UAP now, I guess. But the concept of, you've got, let's say you have a fish in a pond. You've probably heard this, Jim, before. But someone's, fishing in a realm that the fish can't see. And then he casts his line and a bobber lands. And what does the fish see? It sees this sudden hemisphere plop in the surface of its sky. And it just sees this semicircle or this half circle sitting there. And then it's there for a while. And then quickly is taken away and it's just gone. In a way that it's like a lot of these phenomena. We aren't equipped to see every dimension, every angle of these phenomena. So we are these fish with just a piece of the information.
Yep.
That's being shown to us.
That is an excellent comparison. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Actually, this brings me to a story, Jim, that I came across in your book. I'd love to hear you tell. Speaking of all these different sorts of phenomena, some of my favorite stories that we get, and I know you've gotten, and you have a few in your book, are the ones that seem to expose a different reality around time and space. And I would love it if you would stoke this campfire, Jim, and introduce us to Mrs. Raspberry.
Oh, yes. This might be my favorite. You're usually supposed to save the best for last, but this might be my favorite story in the book. This goes back to the early 80s, and this was told for the viewpoint of one of our callers, Jennifer from Idaho. And she was just a little girl. Her and her friend Connie, every summer, would get into all kinds of adventures. And this particular day, it was kind of a rural area. And they had some abandoned railroad tracks, and they led to the nearby lake a couple miles down the road. And they said, you know what, we're going to set off and we're going to go to the lake. And the thing to note about these railroad tracks is that there was no branching off, there was no alternate path, it was one way in, one way out. So anyway, they set off, and this is back before cell phones and things, and, kids, a lot of times it's kind of scary now to think about, but kids would basically say, see you later, Mom and Dad. See you at dinner time.
Good old days.
So anyway, setting the stage, that was the situation. They head off and they go down the treks. I don't know if it was a mile or so, but it was a good way in. And it was heavily wooded, and then they come to this clearing, and there's these houses. And there's a woman in what they would have termed at the time a house dress, which you didn't see as much in the 80s, but there were still maybe some older women and things who would wear those. I know my grandmother wore one. And this woman was pinning up clothes on the clothesline, as people used to do. You don't see that too much today, but used to be very common. And there was a house, the clothesline, the woman, a raspberry bush. And they struck up a conversation with this woman. She was very nice, very sweet. And she asked the girl, she said, "Would you like some raspberries?" And they're like, "Sure, we'll have some raspberries." So they kind of put their shirts out, basket style, so she can put the raspberries in there. And the girls said that their mom probably weren't very happy because of the raspberry stains on the shirts. They ate the raspberries, talked with the woman a little bit more, went about their way, went to the lake, had a great day, lots of fun. We get ready to come back home. They're going down the railroad tracks. And they're going down the railroad tracks. There's no clearing, there's no houses, there's no woman, there's no clothesline, there's no raspberry bush. One way out, one way in. They can't figure it out. They can't figure out what's going on. So Jennifer, a day or two later, asked her grandma, she said, "This is what happened to me. Are there any houses over there anywhere?" Her grandma said, "Yeah, there were houses there in the 1920s before the railroad came through." And the interesting thing was, Jennifer, and I really appreciate when people do this, she had a conversation with her friend Connie as adults before she came on the show. And it might have been some time before she came on the show, but she said, "Connie, let me just tell you what I remember from childhood." And she just told the story that I told. "Am I misremembering this or whatever?" She said, "No. It's exactly what happened, right down to the stains on our t-shirt. This is what happened."
Yeah.
Now, guys, this is the kind of story that has two explanations, in my mind at least. Not that I'm the final authority. One explanation is that Jennifer's making it up, which I don't know why she would. First of all, she did not strike me as though she was making it up.
Right.
I don't believe she was making it up. And it's not like she's going to be on national television and get big book contracts or anything by telling this story on my show. Plus, I just believed her when I heard this story. And I think after doing this for a while, you can pick up on if somebody's kind of,
Yeah. Running around.
Right.
building things up a little bigger than they are.
Yeah. Feeding you creepypasta.
Or she experienced something that the best word we have for it right now is paranormal.
Yeah.
Now, what that means, whether it's something that's totally science, but as I said before, it's the science of the 25th century, I don't know. Maybe it was a time slip. I don't know what it was, but there you have it. And then you have to be the judge. The reader and the listener have to be the judge if it holds water. But I think it does.
Yeah, I love those stories. I love I love ghost stories as well. I love, shadow people, all sorts of paranormal phenomena. Anything Fortean is fascinating to me, but the time slip stuff, because it's so fleeting, I guess they're all kind of fleeting, but because it's so unique and they're so infrequent, I feel like in all these sorts of reports. But we had one come in that reminds me of that, which I called the Nebraskan Transdimensional gas station.
Oh, yeah.
And it was this guy, I think it was around last year, he submitted it. We presented on, the beginning of this season, I think episode 3 of the season. But he was going down I-80, which you're probably familiar with, Jim, because it starts out here in Ohio.
Sure.
Or it's in here anyway. But he was going out west, and they need to stop for gas and snacks. They get off at this gas station. They pull off the highway. There's no pumps. So they're okay, well, let's at least get some snacks. They go in. There's nobody inside, but there are snacks. So they're looking around, waiting for someone to walk in. And as they're looking around, they realize that all of the snacks, sounds so crazy, but what a fascinating detail, if true, all of the snacks were either German or British snacks. And this was in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska.
Huh.
And as they're waiting, a woman who's dressed in, old-fashioned, but like clerk garb, I guess, of a gas station, she walks into the gas station, but she comes from across the street from the forest, from the woodline. Was she having a cigarette break and she enjoyed that area of nature? I don't know, but strange again. Walks in, very quiet but polite, and sells them these German and English snacks, I guess. And they go on their way. Of course, as you probably guessed by now, on their way back, they try to find this place. They can't find it. They look on Google. They actually take the time to stop around the area and ask other shops, a few exits down, like, hey, where is this place? No one's heard of it. No one's ever experienced it. The same kind of inexplicable. And again, like your story, corroboration. They were with somebody else.
Right.
Someone that recalls that. That's so important.
No, it is. I think it is important. I think it adds a lot of veracity to it. So what is that? I mean, is there some kind of dimensional slip? Is it a time slip? I mean,
yeah.
People are so fascinated by things like the Mandela effect and those types of things. And you have to wonder if there is something to it,
Yeah.
and that maybe we're accessing slightly different realities.
Yeah. Frequencies overlapping, maybe temporarily.
Yeah, it was interesting. I did an interview on the Paranormal podcast a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Charles Liu, who is actually an astrophysicist who wrote a book about quantum physics.
Oh.
And I had asked him, I said, is it possible that in another universe, another multiverse, in the multiverse somewhere, that I'm the astrophysicist and you are the podcaster interviewing me? And he said something to the effect, well, that would be difficult to imagine. I said, don't worry, it's difficult for me to imagine too.
Nice.
But
I mean, that is the idea, though. I mean, the way I've heard it stated before, right? That like anything within infinity of,
yeah, every possible permutation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I say yes, Jim.
Yeah. And then you get into things like, and I know we're going a little far afield here, but
that's what we do in the whole
simulation theory. And is it, like a glitch in the game?
Right. Yeah.
Non-playable characters and things like that.
Well, and that's the thing about, and not to dive too deep into simulation theory, but that is, I mean, so many of the things that we discuss on our show, and I'm sure you discuss on your show, can be mapped to that sort of theory. Where like there are, for example, poltergeist, there's an issue in the code of a figment, a phantom, right? It was something that was there once, but then there's leftover code, whatever the analogy would be, but
Ghost in the machine.
And the ghost in the machine, I guess in the same way, if you have any belief in an afterlife, or let's say a higher power or creator in that regard, I guess that's sort of a game master in my mind, at least.
Yeah, I always say it's a programmer.
Exactly.
I mean, really, if we talk about a programmer that creates a world in a video game, well, to that game, that's God. So is God just the grand programmer?
Well, that was it. Yeah, when you mentioned earlier, Jim, about the story of Mrs. Raspberry and the idea of things living outside kind of our realm, and then Chris with the Transdimensional gas station. Yeah, that concept of things being outside what we can understand. I always thought about it as like, in terms of simulation theory, if we are all inside the computer and we are part of the program, how can we ever understand anything outside of the computer?
Right.
We couldn't. So does it exist? Well, we can't know, but it doesn't mean it doesn't, just because there's no way for us to perceive it or understand it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I often think that we are living in a simulation, and sometimes I think it's a bad simulation. And I get that feeling from one prime example, my experience with terrible phone service.
Yes, absolutely. I recently broke free of that garbage code of a bad simulation by getting away from a phone carrier I've had for a long time and switching over to Mint Mobile.
This episode is sponsored by Mint Mobile.
Yay!
Yes, it is. And that decision I made was really a great decision. Leaving that garbage ghoul of a phone carrier I'd had forever was something I should have done a long time ago, and I'm really glad I did, because when I switched to Mint Mobile, it was an easy process. The website's super intuitive, really quick to get through the process, and super easy to switch over.
And you got to keep your phone number.
Awesome.
And the activation process was as transparent
as the veil on Halloween.
Yes, exactly.
Or more so. Yeah, it's super easy. We switched, and so should you. And how do you do that? You go to mintmobile.com/beliefhole, where you'll see right now that all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan.
Yes!
That's what I'm on. Yeah, you get high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered by the nation's largest 5G network. You can keep your phone and your number when you sign up with Mint Mobile, along with all your existing contacts.
That's handy.
Yes, it is. Keep in touch.
Check the link in the show notes and find out how easy it is to get that monkey off your back, or dogman on your back, whatever is hounding you, with your old provider.
That's right, Jer. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/beliefhole. That's mintmobile.com/beliefhole.
Yes.
Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month like I did at mintmobile.com/beliefhole.
Now there's a $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Fascinating. Well, speaking of the more out there things, there's ghosts, there's cryptids, there's all sorts of stuff. One of the things that scares me are the things that I feel like are less fleeting. Mm-hmm. Things that I have less control over, I know little about. And I feel like you have to have some sort of power to extricate yourself from situations. I'm being very vague. Basically what I'm saying is
the heavy anchors of the paranormal, like you're going to say curses, right? Is that what you're...
Yes, there's a story in Jim's book that I'd like Jim to recount, but it does involve curses. And it hit me specifically because on a recent members only live stream, someone came on to talk to us about how we were cursed many centuries ago through a family line. So it was timely. And I'd love for you to tell this story, Jim.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
Yeah, this one's called I Curse You. And this was one of the more chilling ones in the book. This was John from Idaho. And when he called on the show, he said he had told this to many people because he felt that he would be ridiculed. Now, this goes back to the late 70s and early 80s. John's dad ran a painting business, and he employed several people. Now, one of the workers in particular wasn't working out, so John's dad was going to have to let him go. So basically the way it worked was the workers for John's dad's company would come to the house every day and get their assignment. So I assume he ran the business out of his house. That particular day, John was 10 years old and happened to be home. This man who wasn't working out came to get his assignment, and John's dad pulled the worker aside and said, I'm going to have to let you go. This just isn't working out. And this guy became very, very upset. He said, you can't fire me. And John's dad said, oh, why couldn't I do that? The man said, because I'm Jesus Christ. What do you say to that? And John's dad said, well, you're not Jesus Christ. You are fired and you need to leave. Well, the man was not going to let it go at that. In fact, he said, and he looked at the whole family when he said this. He said, I curse you. I curse you. I curse your family. I place this curse on you, and you will have bad luck from this point onward. And John said, he'd heard of curses even as a kid, and you don't think much about it. This guy seemed like he was kind of like, had something going on, some issues. And John says that curse may or may not be what led to what happened next, the multiple things that happened next. But here's what happened next. Within a year, his mother became ill with cancer and passed away. Then John's dad had a couple of multi-million-dollar lawsuits filed against his business due to a couple of freakish accidents. He lost his business, got ill, and died within a couple of years. And John said, in addition to those horrible, horrible things, weird things started to happen around the house. Minor incidents. He'd be walking through the house and he'd hear a knocking on an inside wall, not on an outside wall, when he was home by himself. He'd get up in the middle of the night and he'd remember looking out in the front yard and seeing something standing outside his willow tree at 2 or 3 in the morning after his mom passed. First he thought it was his eyes playing tricks on him, but it kept happening. He said on more than one occasion he saw this shadow detach itself from the tree and move away. Life was tough. Within a few short years, his mother had died, his grandmother, his only surviving grandparent, and his father passed as well. He said the intensity continued to ratchet up until one night in 1980. He was asleep in bed when he had a dream which was horrible. He began to see this green fog come up the stairway, and then out of the mist he saw his mother and grandmother emerging, but they weren't ordinary people. They were crawling along the ceiling with claws and fangs, a terrible, terrible dream. He woke up with a start. He was very shaken, but cognizant that this was just a dream. But at that point, when he was awake, he felt pressure on his chest, pushing him down into the bed and holding him there. Now, he knows what sleep paralysis is, but he's not sure that that's what it was. He said what he experienced, it seemed a lot like the old hag syndrome, because Not only was he unable to move, he felt pressure pushing him down into his bed. And when he was fully awake, struggling against the force, he heard a voice whisper his name very loudly and clearly next to him. John. Finally, the pressure was released. He jumped out of his bed and quickly went to his light switch. Underneath it, he saw something very, very hard to describe. He said words fail him. He doesn't know exactly what to call it. Maybe a creature. It was about 3 feet tall. It was red and had a scaly body, very thick. It was about the size of a fire hydrant.
Wow.
At least that's what it reminded him of. And around its head, going all the way around in a circle, were small horns protruding. He saw it. He stopped, and he says he's telling the truth. It opened its mouth and laughed at him, John says. He leapt to the side, turned on the light switch, and there was nothing. He was shaken, questioning his sanity. And he went downstairs, thought, oh, maybe look at some TV. The TV set turned itself on. They didn't have a remote control. It was 1980 when you had to physically pull the knob out. He said he doesn't remember what happened from there, except there was that shadow by the willow tree again. He said he tucked it all as best as possible into the back of his psyche, thinking no one would never believe it. If he said, I felt a touch, I heard a kick, that's one thing, but to claim I saw a creature that I could see and describe, that's likely to be dismissed. And that was his story.
Wow.
He said after his father died, everything seemed to turn around. It was just a strange series of horrible coincidences for those 4 years, if that's what they were. It was one tragedy after another. I wouldn't have tied it together had I not seen that man point at us, look us in the eye, and say, I curse you.
It's awful.
Dark. Yeah, that is a dark grand slam of phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Poor guy.
I wonder, I like to think that, you're minding your own business, you're trying to get by in the world, that if somebody randomly decides they're going to curse you, that it can work. That's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But do I think it's possible? Yeah, I guess I do think it's possible.
Who curses someone?
Yeah.
That seems like such a...
Yeah, what kind of jerk?
I mean, it definitely feels like very old world. Like, do we know if this
Yeah.
person was of a particular spirituality or...
No.
Man.
Well, it's interesting. There's another story in the book that goes back to Sicily, where it's very much like that.
Oh, yeah.
A family was cursed and a dead chicken was thrown at them.
Oh, geez.
It was a very docile family. Everybody got along. They came back to the States and everybody was arguing at each other. And that's in the book too. So yeah, that's very true about the kind of old world thing. And my wife is of Italian descent. She's first generation American. And, her dad had the horn. There's all these little things,
What's the horn? I know like the evil eye I've heard of, but...
Yeah, what's the horn?
Well, the evil eye thing I have actually on my wall over here, protection.
Oh, crazy. Don't point it at me.
But it's actually looking at me right now. It's supposed to be protection. I hope that it is.
Oh, good.
But I think it's the cornu they call it, and it's supposed to protect you.
Okay.
I don't know exactly because I am not Italian. And then there's another. What was the other? Because I did a really interesting show, I thought, with the author of Antonio Pagliarulo is his name, on The Evil Eye. That's also of Italian descent. And we talked about the horn. There's also this superstition among many Italians to have change in the car. I don't know what that is, to have coins in the car for good luck.
Yeah.
Another thing that Antonio told me about, which was very interesting because I saw it, sometimes when you would talk with older members of the family, from Italy, they would compliment you on something and say afterwards, God bless. What a beautiful baby. God bless. What a beautiful car. God bless. You got a great job. God bless. That was so... There's the putting the evil eye on, the malocchio, I guess it's called. Now, you could do that intentionally, but you could do that unintentionally, supposedly.
Oh, interesting.
If you had envy. So in other words, I could say, congratulations on all the success of your podcast. But if I even have a little bit of envy, it might leak out and kind of curse you. So what I would say is, congratulations on all of the success of your podcast, God bless. And the God bless would seal it off.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I start using that.
But the funny thing was, Antonio told me about that. I'm like, wait, my wife's family does that. That's why they didn't want to curse me.
Oh, that's a good family. That's good in-laws right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
keep you curse free.
It's like splashing a bit of holy water just in case.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was going to ask you, Jim, this is kind of off topic before I request another story of you, but collecting stories throughout your many years of doing this, we started doing this. There were certain stories that I never expected. Some of a phenomenon I've heard of, like fairies. I'm surprised at the amount of like gnome sightings we get. But the one that stands out to me because of the amount of people submitting these independently of each other in different avenues, and also because it's such a unique thing, but disembodied hands. Is that something you've ever come across?
A couple times, I think. A couple times.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
But not a lot.
Okay.
There was one story, I think, from the Middle East where there was a disembodied hand smoking.
Awesome.
That's interesting.
Because there was something in this is like, it's not a book or anything, and this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, but something about there was a thought that there was a spirit or something cursing the house, and the matriarch of the family, like grandmother or something, went out and chased the smoking hand away with a broom. But yeah, I've heard that. The other thing I hear is people will see ghosts or specters with no legs. They just kind of fade out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard one great story we had was about someone who saw like a Roman legion of troops. This was like in a field or something, I think, but the legs just kind of faded out,
Yeah.
And you do wonder, for example, in the UK and England specifically, those Roman roads and so forth, you just wonder if those spirits are lurking out there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Jim, why don't we see caveman ghosts?
That's a good question. I've got another question for you.
Yes.
Why do ghosts always have clothes on?
Oh, that is a good question, actually.
Lloyd Auerbach, who is a fantastic parapsychologist and who has forgotten more than I'll ever know about this stuff, he talked about, this whole idea that ghosts have to be at night. He's like, why? Why do ghosts have to be at night? There's no reason that they have to be at night.
Right.
We've just kind of, I don't want to misquote him, but I think the general idea is we've built up this kind of archetype or this meme in our heads that it has to be at nighttime. But why can't a ghost be in the daytime?
That's interesting.
That's a good question.
It makes you wonder if, when you put it in that light, it makes you wonder, do we see people that we think are people sometimes throughout the day?
That's an excellent question. I've had that question.
Yeah.
I grew up in the city of Cleveland. I grew up in an old A-frame house, and probably when I was 11 or 12 years old. And it was like originally a house that had a front apartment and a back apartment, but we had connected. It was a very old house. There's a couple of kinds of old houses, like the old, ornate, beautiful mansion kind of house. This was not that. This was like an old, modest A-frame house. But I swear one day in a little tiny hallway that connected the two what used to be apartments, or sides of the house, we call them the different sides of the house. I swear a person passed me. And I did the calculus when I was a kid because, I was probably about 12 years old, but I'm like, well, wait, my uncle and my brother were here, my dad and my mom were here. Wait, they're all accounted for. What passed me?
Yeah.
And it was just like just like you would see a person, and I swear I still wonder to this day, that old house, did I see something and I didn't realize it? And that's an excellent point. Who knows?
Yeah.
Ghosts could be around us all the time. And that's the other thing when I talked about, maybe we can't see them. Mom, I'm sorry, but my mom could be standing right. I'm not joking. She could be standing right here next to me. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've even extended that thought process to things like UFOs and aliens. I used to think the idea of aliens, it's all out there. It's all E.T.
Right.
But now, you look in, there's some Harvard researchers recently looking into this and talking about cryptoterrestrials. Are they here? Are they among us? Or are they just invisible somehow? Are they in another dimension that we can't see?
Mm-hmm. Another frequency, yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. You don't smell carbon monoxide, but it's there and it'll kill you just the same.
Right.
So, I guess my point is that we think we've got it all figured out. I'm convinced we don't have it all figured out. And we get these little glimpses, these little cool clues that we don't have it figured out. And most of us say, whatever that was. But
I don't have time for it. You can only make so much space in your brain, in your day-to-day life.
Well, it's true, because if you think about it, even doing what I do, you still got to pay the mortgage, cut the grass. If you've got young kids, get the young kids to school. I mean, whatever your life is, you have to do what you have to do to survive.
Right.
And it's hard to make space for the unknown. But I think if you do, it increases your sense of wonder.
Yes, that's for sure.
It widens your perspective. I mean, some people say, oh, you're freaked out or you're scared by all this stuff. Does it terrify you? You do have nightmares. And I don't actually, because even if they're the darker energies, the nastier energies, which I absolutely believe there are, that means there's also the good then.
Yeah.
It means it's not all what you can weigh on a scale or measure in a test tube. So to me, in a weird way, all this spooky stuff is very affirming.
No, that's a great point.
It's an interesting way to put it.
I mean, if you believe in the darkness, there are definitely some things that I've come across in my life that have been pretty heavy, pretty dark. I've had my own paranormal experiences that I've mentioned on the show briefly before. Pretty harrowing experiences where it, in a weird way, does affirm, like kind of reaffirm a faith if you've ever had one, or at least give you some idea that there is more to life after death. I had an out-of-body experience once that gave me the most comfort I've ever had. It was really bizarre. Not expecting it. I was in a weird time in my life. I had been broken up with, I guess I should say, in all honest fashion. But,
yes, you were dumped.
We've all been there.
Yes. I'd come back from California, left school to get back with an ex. Really bad idea, but thought it was going to work out. But I was going through this period of my life, and I wasn't very healthy. And I remember I was in my room at this time back above my parents' garage. This was like after college. And I remember laying there and feeling very warm. And suddenly realizing that I couldn't move my body, so sleep paralysis in that sense. And then suddenly there was, and mind you, this is years, I don't know, probably 15 years before we started doing the show, or really me looking seriously into this stuff. I'd always been interested, but my uncle had an OB, but I didn't know anything about this stuff. But I immediately felt a sense of vibration that started in my feet, and it moved up through my legs and through the rest of my body up to my head. And my vision started to move where I was looking at the ceiling. Suddenly it was like it was shifting to the left. And I was seeing, but I knew that my body hadn't moved, but it was just the weirdest sensation. I could see the ceiling, but I was like, I guess in like a film term, it would be like a tracking shot. The ceiling is suddenly I'm in a tracking shot, and I freak out and I get kind of slapped back, rubber band back to my body. Happens again. Again, I'm in like a bad period of my life, so I don't really care what's going on. If I leave my body, I leave my body. And I end up going down the stairs. I won't tell the whole story, but basically like I tried to open the door, went through the living room, and realized that this was an unusual experience. So I was taking note of each light that was on, floated towards my father, who was asleep in a chair watching Ellen or something.
So you're a fan of Justin Bieber today? He just started following you on today, right? He just started following you?
But I looked down at the book he had open, and I remembered to make note of the number. It was 32. And as soon as I tried to interact with him, it was like a rubber band back. And I was immediately, it wasn't like I woke up. It was just suddenly I was back in my body. It took me a while to tell anybody that story, because it's not that I was worried people think I was crazy. I was worried people were going to think that I was making it up. So it's like, what's the point of telling that story? So I understand when people are hesitant to tell their stories, which is why I think people appreciate shows like yours and our show, where they feel comfortable, like there's a community of people who are open to it.
Now, real quickly, I don't want to take all the time, but it reminds me that experience, and thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Bruce Grayson, has done a lot of research on near-death experiences and so forth. He was on a show a couple of years ago. He had a book out called After. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
But anyway, Dr. Grayson comes from not particularly a religious background, not particularly a believer or anything like that. Probably beginning his career, probably very skeptical of these kind of things.
Yeah.
But he told the story when he was very young in the profession as a physician. And this one particular day, he was in the hospital cafeteria. And he had a tie on, and he was eating his lunch. And he spilled some spaghetti sauce on his tie.
Ah, darn it.
And no sooner that happened, he got a call calling Dr. Grayson.
Paging Dr. Grayson.
He had to go in and help a patient who was essentially, I don't know if it was an overdose or it was something very serious where they were essentially dying. And it was very touch and go. And I think the person may have even been in coma, I'm not sure. It may have flatlined. But anyway, this girl came out of it. the next day, and he goes in to see her, and, we're really glad to see you're okay and everything's fine. And she said, thank you, and were you able to get the spaghetti sauce stain out? And she went on to tell a story where when all this happened, she floated through the hospital. She could see him. She could see all these, people waiting for her, all these different people. And he said that stuck with him, and he started researching it and just, has found so many interesting out-of-body and near-death experience stories over the years. And he still doesn't come from a religious standpoint. He's not saying that there's a higher power or anything. But he's essentially, I think, saying that there's really something to this that's been observed consistently.
Something beyond the physical, it would seem.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Our third part, we have another brother. He's not a twin, but he is an older brother, 3.5 years older. But his passion for anything when it comes to what we do on the show, actually, you could almost say exclusively his passion is for NDEs and those sorts of accounts. We did a couple episodes on Raymond Moody. Is that Dr. Raymond Moody? Is that his
I've
work?
interviewed him a couple of times. He's great.
Yeah, great stuff. I know like a pioneer in this area, right? But there's absolutely something to that. I think if anybody looks into it, there's so many accounts now. There's so much good data on these experiences, these near-death experiences, that it's pretty hard to dispute, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to it, and it indicates that something lies beyond.
Absolutely.
Speaking of near-death experiences, the afterlife, there is the good and there is the bad. There's the light and the dark, Jim, as you mentioned earlier. Speaking of the dark, one of the other things that scares me, it's curses and also the real dark, the true dark, the king of the dark, demons, Satan. I'm not sure where I stand on all of that stuff. I just know that I believe that there is that evil out there. And I think this time of year is a good time to
play with the Ouija board.
Not maybe play with it.
We'll find out after this story. Well, the first story in the book. This is a short and sweet one, but spooky. This was from Mariah in Pennsylvania, and she said that she's used Ouija boards since she was a child. She said it's just always interested her, and she started with her friend Molly years ago. They would play it every night over the summer. Whether at Molly's house or hers, they'd always be on this thing. They said every night when they did this spirit named Gail would come through. And they'd ask for someone different, but they would always get Gail, and she was kind of innocent and innocuous, nothing weird from, except for the fact they were talking to the dead, Mariah says. Now, she said she had heard as a child you were not supposed to leave the Ouija board on the floor because it was considered disrespectful to the spirits. Don't know if that's true, but that's what Mariah said she had heard. So during this particular session, they had the board propped up on a broken, unplugged guitar amp, and they were talking with Gail, the spirit, again. Not much was happening, but then the planchette stopped moving and the room got very still and spooky. Then, by itself, the unplugged amp clicked on. It started making sounds like an old radio tuner does when somebody tries to dial in a station. Said they were taken back by the noise coming out of the broken amp. Then it got worse. Suddenly, they heard this deep southern voice of a man who sounded like a preacher, and he said,
"The devil is real!"
Then the amp audibly clicked off. Mariah said she never ran so quickly in her entire life. She couldn't recall much about what happened next. Her and Molly were almost killing each other trying to get out of the room. Now, Mariah goes on to say, some might question her judgment, but she went right back to the Ouija board, and nothing like that has happened since. She said she doesn't know what was coming through that night, but it was terrifying.
What a bizarre tale.
It is terrifying.
Multiple layers in that. You've got the weird, almost electro voice phenomenon in a way through that guitar amp. Also, my question about that story is, I didn't consider the first time I read it, but reviewing it again for this interview was the fact that the voice coming out, it's almost like, was that voice a helpful spirit? Because it is sort of warning her, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's frightening, but it almost like a guard.
Hey, the devil's real.
You know, the thing about a Ouija board, and I don't want to get sued by any major game makers. Plus, we have one
Parker Brothers.
My wife has one down in the basement from the 80s. We don't use it, but it's there. And I've got a planchette in my video set here. So
yeah, we've got one in the living room here.
So I'm not like, but I do say this. a chainsaw, for example. Now, people can carve beautiful wooden carvings and ice carvings with chainsaws. I'm amazed when I see these people do this. Mm-hmm. And then you have somebody like me who's more apt to cut his arm off. And I sometimes wonder if you use it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Could it be like a spiritual chainsaw opening a door?
Yeah.
Spiritual chainsaw.
I like that visual.
Good term.
That's great.
Yeah, it's not a toy.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about that too. You know, do these things extend to something people can do, or you have to be someone who's like practiced in an art of some sort to do certain things?
Yeah,
like,
I think there's definitely, I talk to people like Karen Dahlman, Robert Murch, people who know what they're doing. And so they say, hey, this is just a tool. There's nothing fearful about it, but a chainsaw is a tool too.
That's true. And most people who use Ouija boards, I feel like the vast, probably majority of people who use chainsaws aren't practiced in like, anything spiritualism or any new age sort of divination.
Right. That use chainsaws, you said? Or you mean Ouija boards?
Ouija boards.
There you go.
Did I say chainsaws?
You don't need to be practiced in
that either.
Anything new age to use a chainsaw.
If Parker Brothers comes out with a chainsaw edition of Ouija board, they owe me some royalties.
Yeah, I always had this kind of weird connection with the Ouija board in the sense that there is something that, with all the dangers, I'm drawn to it at times.
It can be tempting and exciting.
But the consequences that could come with it, I don't want to make that mistake.
Yeah, and you know what other temptations and potential consequences I struggle with from time to time as an adult human?
What's that, Chris? I think I know.
For example, being in the mood to have some late night cocktails, maybe with some friends, and I want to have a great night, but I also want to have a good morning. That can be tricky.
That's a great point, Chris. Sounds like you need to plan ahead with ZBiotics. This episode brought to you by ZBiotics.
Excellent.
A pretty revolutionary, newly designed pre-alcohol drink.
You know, if you're watching on YouTube, you may be familiar with our premieres. And I like to relax after a long production week, chatting with you guys with a couple cocktails. But after discovering ZBiotics, I can enjoy a night with some drinks and then also enjoy the morning.
Yeah, the idea of waking up refreshed after a night of drinking sounds pretty incredible. But what is this pre-alcohol beverage we're talking about? ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic.
That's right. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking.
Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. And pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down.
And to achieve this effect, just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night.
Yeah.
Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow.
Yeah, that really worked for me. In fact, the first night I tried ZBiotics, I was a little uncertain, to be honest, about would I feel anything? Would it be any different? The day after a night of drinks, I was expecting to not feel very motivated to be active, which can be a real struggle. But I was pretty blown away to wake up the next day and really have this kind of overall feeling of well-being. And I actually rode 10 miles on my bike. And usually it's kind of a foregone conclusion that I'm not going to be super active, let alone ride 10 miles.
That's pretty magical.
Yeah, it really made my day great. So I definitely recommend giving it a shot, especially if you're interested in waking up feeling refreshed. You can go to zbiotics.com/beliefhole to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use BeliefHole at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked.
Unlike the Ouija board.
Yeah, that's right.
No guarantees there.
So remember to head to zbiotics.com/beliefhole and use the code BeliefHole at checkout for 15% off.
Check the show notes for a direct link.
Well, Jim, I got one question before we let you go here, and I've got a busy schedule. Actually, Jeremy, this is your question. It's kind of your fun Halloween question. You want to ask Jim?
Oh, well, I had a few, but I'm going to do my final Halloween question. I had some Halloween questions for you, Jim. If you were going to be turned, vampire or werewolf?
Oh, it's got to be vampire.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Now, why, Jim? Why? I want to hear your motivations here.
I was just talking about this last night. I have very
that's weird.
Sharp canine teeth. Seriously, last night, for some reason, I was telling my wife, I've got
synchronicity.
I've got some very sharp canine teeth. I'd be a good vampire. So maybe this was like precognitive.
Hey, baby.
Time is fluid. Time is a wheel.
What are the odds?
There you go.
It's a good synchronicity right there. Or we have a microphone in your home. That's terrifying. That's the conspiracy side.
We are outside the simulation.
Exactly. You're the programmers.
Thank you so much, Jim, for coming on. We really appreciate your time. And again,
A true pleasure, my friend.
you're a pioneer and you are a legend. So thank you so much for joining us in the hole.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations on your book, by the way. True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire.
Yes.
Volume 6.
Get them all.
Congratulations. God bless.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.
There you go. No curses.
I will just say that in an Italian way.
Stay spooky.
Yeah, that's right.
Jim, thank you so much, brother. All right. Well, here we are back in
Back in the present.
Jim is gone and John is back.
I am back, and I got to hear all those fantastic stories that tickled my scary bone.
Yeah, we hope you guys liked him. Thank you, Jim, for making the time. We had a blast talking to you.
Yeah, it was great. John, did you have I know you weren't there during the interview, but did you have a favorite after hearing these experiences?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I can't remember the name of it, but there's kind of an obvious favorite one.
What's that?
I curse you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty involved. And although it's not really totally provable about exactly what happened, it seemed very coincidental that all those things followed after the work incident where he fired Jesus Christ.
Right.
That's bad juju for sure. Yeah, what a strange story. Those, John, I feel like those and anything demonic are the two, I think, always the most frightening because those are things there's like no level of control over it. And I feel like things that can follow you. Curses and demons, like a haunted house story is scary. But if it's a figure and then you leave, or you were at a hotel and then you're fine the next day. But when someone curses you, even if you don't believe in curses, part of your brain is like, what if?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what's frightening about it to me.
Yeah.
Can you make a curse yourself?
It's creepy to think that there are people in the world that practice black magic and
They have no empathy for other people, apparently.
no empathy. And also the people that are being cursed or have these hexes put on them have no idea
That's what's crazy. Like when you don't know.
that they've been hexed. Maybe we're hexed.
Right.
I hope not.
But yeah, people that have, like are just constantly getting in the worst situations and who knows? I mean, just the idea that someone hates you that much that they're willing to go to that kind of lengths to destroy your life.
Yeah. Not taking into account the possible karmic reactions that might befall you doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
But to your point, John, I think that's a really good point because you often think, okay, if you've been cursed, and you hear that you've been cursed as a psychological creation that you manifest yourself in your life based on that expectation, or maybe a buried subconscious worry that there is something to curses. But then your point of like people that don't even realize they've been cursed, where a lot of terrible things are going on and maybe a medium comes in and says, oh, pull up that rug and there's some sort of symbol scrawled on the floor.
Under the carpet.
There's chicken bones above your door frame you didn't know were there.
Yeah.
And that explains all this bad juju you've been experiencing for so long.
I was going to say also, I think John made me think about this with his statement. Even if you don't believe in magic or black magic, let's say you don't believe any of that, it's all hogwash. There's a possibility that even the intent, like if someone, as you said, hates you that much to put a curse on you and really wants you to have horrible experiences, what about that sort of energy you're putting out and manifesting outside of quote unquote magic? It could be just a sort of paranormal law we're unfamiliar with at this point.
Is that a kind of magic even?
Yeah, just like a power of intention sort of stuff. Either way, it's freaky. Either way, it's not something I want.
No, sir, I don't like it.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, some solid stories. But I think, Chris, you said that you found some particularly creepy stories.
Yeah, we just scratched the Jim Harold Campfire surface here. Again, the book, True Ghost Stories, Volume 6, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6. Yes, I picked out my favorites. Now it's my time to tell some stories that Jim has curated in this book. And there are some pretty terrifying and truly bizarre stories in here that we are going to dig deep into in the expansion, as well as Jeremy has done some research he's wanted to do for a couple of years now, which I have never wanted him to do because it's scary to me. But the Grim Reaper, the deep dive Grim Reaper stuff.
Oh, I forgot about the Grim Reaper stories.
That's coming up in the second half of the members episode. And it is very fascinating. Definitely frightening.
Yeah, it piggybacks off of one of the stories from Jim's book called The Little Reaper.
Right.
And I just found it a fascinating, kind of unique Reaper account.
Is that the one with the weird braids in that like little bean guy's head?
Oh, no, that was
the bean.
His name is Crypt.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
That was a strange story.
Another creepy one in the expansion.
Yeah, I'm working on that one right now.
That's,
So we'll have more of these in the expansion, guys. So I think we found some of the even fringier, creepy stories from the book. Again, great book.
Don't hesitate. Get over to thebeliefhole.com, hit the big red expansion button, and get yourself some more hole.
That's right. And it is Halloween, guys. So I thought it might be nice to give a little special Halloween treat to you all. There was a...
Candy.
It's not candy, John. But it is tasty if you like creepy stories.
Do you guys have a favorite Halloween?
Candy corn.
What?
If you had to get one candy for Halloween.
Candy corn.
Well, candy corn
Candy
is
corn? It is uniquely Halloween.
It is not very good either. I was just kidding.
No.
You can have one piece.
What is it even? It's just like pure cornstarch?
What flavor is it? I guess it's like a caramel flavor?
Caramel and
Really?
corn. Caramel and corn.
I think it tastes like candy corn. That's what the flavor it is.
The flavor.
A proprietary blend.
I'm pretty sure it is caramel.
Proprietary blend of corn and syrup. The new candy corn is for everyone.
I think every kid has had that experience where that was like their favorite Halloween candy and then they ate like a gallon and then got really sick.
Oh, God. That's true. Yeah, it's like poison.
It's like Hot Pockets. You can't have more than 5 in a sitting or you won't feel well.
Yeah.
5 is the limit.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
And I did always kind of like the texture of them.
Oh, candy corn?
Yeah, there's something about that like chewy.
Well, it's it's almost a crunch, but not quite. And then you just chew through.
It's like a hard paste.
Yeah.
I love hard paste.
My favorite Halloween candy is not a good texture chew because it feels like it could pull your teeth out, especially if you have fake teeth.
Laffy Taffy.
Tootsie Rolls. Those are my favorite
Oh, yeah.
Halloween treat.
What kind of brittle teeth do you have? Tootsie Rolls are pretty soft.
I've lost 3 teeth to Tootsie Rolls.
My gums are coming out from the Tootsies.
I had that motorcycle accident
Oh, yeah.
when I was saving that child.
Oh,
and
yeah, but what were the
I
red?
knocked a tooth out.
That makes it sound way cooler than it was,
Save
Chris.
that child.
A motorcycle
I
accident.
did. It was very brave. Courageous.
Wasn't it a tiny motorcycle? Like a miniature that you were on with your
It was a
friend?
normal sized motorcycle.
It's an embarrassingly sized motorcycle that you were on.
Anyway, I have my teeth now. That's all that matters.
I found them and plugged them back in, but the Tootsies still get them.
It's a Halloween scare.
The Tootsies grab them, find them, and take them home.
But yes, Ouija. Did you introduce that?
No, I was trying to. And then we got sidetracked with candy.
That was my fault.
But yes, a real treat for you guys if you haven't heard it. Since Jim brought us a Ouija board story, some of my favorite stories are Ouija board stories. So we are going to play for you a story that it reminded me of from the expansion, previous Halloween episodes in the expansion regarding Ouija boards. So sit back, relax, and get freaked.
Get some Tootsies.
Get some Tootsies.
Initiating episode flashback.
Expansion episode 2.14 Ouija boards gone wild.
Is it my turn to read a story?
Yeah, we've got some great stories coming up here and also some interesting perspectives as well.
Get your carpet squares out and sit around the belief hole story time hour.
So I do have a couple notes in here I'm going to also talk about, a couple different perspectives.
Give me a good one.
Okay. This story is called It Had Red Eyes. And it surrounds a group of friends. It reminds me of...
This ties into Zozo.
It reminds you of just hanging out with your friends and you get kind of involved in something that's exciting, but then things take a turn. Red Eyes.
Kelly L. Weaver of Camp Hill, Pennsylvania is a medium and spiritual teacher. She is wary of the Ouija because using it was followed by frightening phenomenon in her home. I used to play with the Ouija board when I was a teenager. My cousin Karen and I would fill our afternoons with this seemingly innocent game. She was going to Florida for a vacation and was told by this board that she'd meet a boy on a bicycle and they would spend time together. When Karen returned home, she was anxious to tell me she did meet a boy on a bicycle and they hung out on the beach during her stay. Now she wanted to play more and more. We'd ask the typical teenage questions about getting married, having kids, and so on. There were times, however, when the board would spell out words like danger, die, murder, and so on. We'd laugh about it and keep playing. Death. After all, it was a silly game, right?
Good question.
I went to a private art school and lived in a haunted house with 5 other girls. Strange things happened in this home. We would hear people climbing the stairs when no one was there. The basement door would burst open on its own more than once. We put a folding chair in front of the door to keep it shut. High security, huh? Strange images would appear in my bedroom mirror. Voices could be heard when no one else was around. Several of the girls wouldn't stay in the house alone. I wasn't afraid. This was normal for me after growing up in my own haunted house. We named our ghost George. Anytime we heard noises or the basement door would open, we'd tell George to knock it off. He seemed to listen.
Sorry.
The mailman knocked on our door and one afternoon told us to be careful. The place was haunted. How do you know? I asked. I used to live here when I was a boy and weird things went on. Just be careful, he said as he handed me the mail. Jamie, one of my roommates, heard this conversation and decided that we'd play with the board that evening and contact George. To make matters worse, this was on Halloween night.
Cal, the veil between the worlds is thinnest tonight. Let's do it.
She giggled. Why not? We'll have fun, I answered.
Enticing.
The rest of the girls agreed that we'd have a seance with this board. That evening, we all gathered in the living room. We lit candles and played Pink Floyd music to add to the drama. I must admit, it was kind of spooky. Jamie and I got ourselves situated in front of the board and began our session.
Is there anyone here that wants to talk to us?
Jamie began. The planchette took off, spelling out different names.
What about George?
I asked.
Is he here with us?
N.O.
Well then, who are we speaking to?
I asked the board. What happened next frightened me so much, I've never touched another Ouija board again. The board was now spelling out foul language. Even a sailor would blush at the filthy words. The basement door burst open on its own with so much force that roommates Penny and Yvonne screamed and ran up the stairs so fast it was comical, but it wasn't. I'm sure it looked like a low-budget horror movie. Jamie was now more intrigued than ever. I wasn't sure what was going on. Noises started coming from the basement, and none of us were brave enough to see who or what was making them. I glanced over at the heat vent on the floor, and what I saw scared me so much, I dove off the chair and refused to touch this so-called game again. I saw 2 red eyes staring back at me through the grates. Jamie and Heidi saw them too. Heidi was so scared, she stayed at her boyfriend's house for the weekend. Jamie wanted more. What was wrong with her, I wondered. My heart was beating so fast, I was gripped with fear. Then, strange gurgling sounds came from the vent. Sounds like it. I started to think that one of our friends had gone into the basement and wanted to scare us. I was so petrified that I found a Christian station and blared the music as loud as it would go. Jamie thought we were all being stupid. She picked up the board and took it to her room. She informed all of us that she planned on using it herself for the rest of the night. I wasn't thrilled at the notion that she was continuing to talk to spirits who manifested themselves in the heat vent with red beady eyes. Mary Ann and I locked ourselves in our room with the church music playing all night. Neither one of us slept a wink. Mary Ann was crying. She was Catholic and her mother would kill her if she found out that she was involved in such an evil thing. I never ventured into the basement after that Halloween night. I refused to look at the heat vents. I continued to live in this house for the next 2 years. However, I never felt quite right alone. The strange noises continued. Objects were moved around, and the basement door still had a mind of its own. I've heard many horror stories pertaining to the Ouija board. Who or what came through that night was not from the light. I can assure you of that.
Creepy, huh? Yeah, it does not sound like
Good reading,
it.
John, by the way.
Thanks.
Well read.
Yeah, they opened the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It reminds me so much of The Gate. Like, just reminds you of little creatures with red beady eyes.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, there's stories that are seemingly innocuous, but it is a doorway. And when you open that doorway,
you're offering a hand into the other dimension.
Right, and you don't know who's on the other side.
Yeah.
It is exciting. It is this mystery. It is the age-old question of, is there life after death? Can I find evidence? I want to know what's going on. I'd like to...
Just want to hang out with a ghost.
Yeah, or whatever. Or even it's partially that feeling of a kid when you're young and you want to believe in magic.
Yeah.
You know, it's that same sort of thing. Like, I want a little bit of mystery magic in my life.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah, it's part of the compelling aspect of it. But it is a doorway. And even though there are some innocuous accounts, there are plenty of accounts where something does come through that maybe you didn't plan on coming through, but you don't really get to choose.
Exactly. You're throwing your reel into a place that you don't know what's underneath.
Right, there might be alligator gar in
a
there.
bee's nest.
Most likely it's alligator gar and sharks and not like a guppy.
Bluegill
or a manatee.
Or a mermaid.
Or a dolphin. Usually like a snapping turtle.
That's the thing. This usually is the case.
Rosemary, she makes a point, you know, and this is obviously debatable, but she reached out to people to get some fresh stories, which she got plenty of. And the majority are dark stories where bad things happen. Her point was, though, those are the stories that you're going to hear from people because those are the ones that people find worth telling and worth listening to. Not many people are interested in a story where it's like, oh, I met my boyfriend because the board said there was going to be a kid on his bike or whatever. The dark ones are the ones that people are going to recount because that's the drama. So you're going to get more dark stories than you will get light stories. I still think regardless, even if it's a 50-50 balance, which I don't think it is, I think it's more dark generally.
Well, I think that's who wants to, play with humans.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode.
Stay away from Ouija boards.
Yes, keep away from the Ouija. Again, big thank you to Jim Harold for coming on.
Yeah, big thanks to Jim.
But we do have some special people to thank.
Some very special people.
Yes, we do.
I heard that they may resemble some sort of large sea creature
in the sky.
2 large
wet mammals.
I don't think they're not the large sea creatures. They ride the large sea creatures.
I said they resemble. Well,
yeah,
yes, that's true.
There's a difference there. I would want to be a sky whale myself. But to have the power to ride one, that's what's exciting.
We refer to them as sky whales, but they're really sky whale riders, is the technical term.
That's right.
And we do. We have 2 of them.
I think you can be either one. Some people may want to float around in the sky, being a sky whale predator.
We could make it optional.
That's true.
We could put up 2 tiers, 1 sky whale,
All
1
right.
sky whale rider.
Let's actually introduce the people.
All right, let's do it. Our first sky whale rider is
very special.
William Davis.
All right.
Sky Whale Rider. Sky Whale Rider.
William Davis?
William Davis.
A man among heroes, a hero among men.
That's right. Solid man with a solid name.
Always can count on you, William. You've been there since when you signed up.
Yes. You've been there since you signed up.
And will be until you leave.
Yes.
Which is hopefully never. Hopefully you stay with us in the hole forever. And what
That's a big commitment.
That's a long time.
No, we're just thank you for
being such a generous soul.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Means a lot. Means a great deal.
Thank you, William. You are special. And one more Skywell rider before we get to our general thanks. And that person is...
Betty Boop.
Betty Boop.
Oh.
No, that's not true.
Oh. Excited.
Almost. It's close, though. It's just...
Doop, doop, doop.
I remember that. Dude.
So
I've thought about that since I was 10.
Boop, boop, doo.
That's Betty Boop.
That is Betty Boop.
There's a great, fascinating story behind that whole thing. We'll get into that some other day. That's really... Anyway, who is it really? It's not Betty Boop.
No. Her name is Holly Joy.
Sky Whale Rider. Sky Whale Rider.
Oh, wow. What a cool name.
I get the tie-in
Holly
Hollywood.
Joy.
Holly
That
Joy.
must be a fantastic Christmas name every time
that is pretty.
Christmas comes.
A Christmas name.
Makes my heart
Holly
happy.
Joy. That is quite a pretty name.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing us joy, Holly.
Yes,
very
thank you,
sweet of you.
Holly.
A sweetheart.
Thank you for coming down in the hole, riding your fellow sky whale.
Yes.
You are officially crowned.
Now I'm just picturing a sky whale riding a sky whale.
It's getting confusing.
Because I said a fellow sky
Yeah.
whale. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Holly. We couldn't do it without you guys. You
Yeah.
help keep the hole going and growing. And
Yeah.
we are very grateful
Very
to
thankful.
everyone, but right now, especially the sky whale.
Yes. And thank you to everyone who's going above and beyond. Shout out People of Interest and Dogmen Whispers.
Let's do the amazing thank yous to the rest of the amazing people that have signed up for thank yous.
Let's do it. All right. First on the list is a Dogman Whisperer. Shayna. Hi, Shayna.
Who hi?
I think we know Shayna very well.
Hi, Shayna.
Wow, wow.
Hello, Shayna.
Hello. Welcome to be here.
You Dogman Whisperer.
I feel like we're in a game show. Running out of time.
It does feel like that.
Get the money.
Kirschners.
Hello.
Kirschners. Gesundheit.
They put an email in their name field, so I think that's the first part of their email. Kirschners is also a Jim, and he is a Dogman Whisperer.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Welcome to be here.
Welcome to be here. Claire Cook. What's you cooking, Claire? Besides our love.
Get in the kitchen.
Get in the kitchen.
She's a cook.
It's true.
That's where cooks belong.
That's true. Not women, but
I
cooks.
never said that women
Just
belong in the
kidding.
kitchen.
Welcome in, Claire.
I belong in the kitchen. I'm in the kitchen all the time cooking.
Brookstein is not your local suit dealer.
Ah.
He is a true hero
Yes.
of the whole. Welcome,
Yes.
Brookstein.
Brookstein, welcome in, sir.
You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. Welcome in.
Another Dogman Whisperer, Shone Cole, is in the house.
Stone Cold is Stone Cold.
Welcome.
As a member.
Stone Cold Shone Cole. C-O-L-E.
Shone Cole. Shone Cole.
I feel like that name is a clue to an adventure.
It is. Adventure to our hearts. Thank you, Shone.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You Dogman Whisperer, you. Another Dogman Whisperer is Click Clock Works. Click Clock Works. Ooh, I like that name. It's fun to say.
Sounds like a watch company.
Welcome to be here. Click Clock Works.
Yes.
That's fun. Fun to say. Try it at home.
Terrific.
Devin Chase will not be chased in the hole. He will be praised for his Dogman Whisperer level support. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
Let's not chase him out of the hole.
Keep him in. Chain him up. Lock him away.
Chain him up. Chain him up in the bottom
Chain
of the
him
hole.
up.
Chain him up.
Okay, okay, that got a little aggressive. Ashley Lilje.
Ashley Leger.
Interesting name, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Franche.
Is that French? Parlez-vous français?
Is it Franche?
Might be.
Thank you, Ashley. That's a pretty name.
Thank you, my sweet lady.
Welcome to Be Here.
Oh, a familiar name in the hole. Grumpy Owl is here.
All right.
Grumpy Owl, yay!
Got that stang last time.
Yeah.
Hope it still burns in your heart.
I hope you like the stinger.
Yes.
And thank you for supporting us, you black-eyed cool kid. Susan Alexander. Hi, Susan.
Susan is not cruising for a bruising.
She's suddenly special. Suddenly Susan.
Suddenly Susan, suddenly special. Now that she's in the hole.
These are great jokes.
Generation X.
The best jokes.
Welcome in.
Ingrid Cool.
Hello.
Ooh. Ingrid Cole?
Ingrid Cool.
Ingrid.
Oh, I get it. Is that like a play on Ingrid Cole?
Oh, maybe.
From Mouthman
Well, it's
Prophecy?
spelled differently.
Oh.
It's Kuehl. What an interesting name.
Yeah.
Ingrid.
Ingrid.
Thank you to be here.
Ingrained in the hole.
Yes.
That's right. Ingrained in our brain.
Welcome in.
Joshua Freitas.
Freitas.
Ooh, yummy.
Do not fret. Joshua Freitas is
Sounds
here.
like an exotic dish.
Freitas.
Yes.
Welcome into the hole, Joshua.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Grumpy Owl is a Dogman Whisperer. Apparently, she signed back up very quickly after and upgraded her tier.
Climbing the ladder.
Thank you, Grumpy Owl.
Grumpy old owl.
You
Yay.
sweetheart.
Yay.
Getting that Dogman status. Rebecca Fair.
Oh.
Welcome to Be Here.
Rebecca Fair.
Who's the fairest in the land? It's Rebecca, I think.
Dashing she is. Dashing.
That's usually a dude.
Well,
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you very much.
You are fair in our hearts. Elizabeth Lowe.
Yes.
Hello, you shadow person.
Yes.
Of interest.
We got a shadow person, guys.
awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Thank you for that generous support.
Don't stay low now that you're in the hole. Actually, you can be low because you were in the hole. Get high.
Oh, there you go. I didn't understand that at all. Thank you for that extra generous support, Elizabeth. It really does mean a lot.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Yes.
Another Dogman Whisperer, Kateri Kubiak.
Ooh.
What is
That's
it?
cool name.
Kateri Kubiak.
Kateri.
Or Kateri? K-A-T-E-R-I.
Kateri.
Kateri Kubiak. I'm sorry for the pronunciation problems.
Murdered your name, but we thank you for being here.
Yes.
You saved our lives. Thank you.
Thank you for being a Dogman Whisperer. Ryan S., hello. How are you?
Oh, hi. Ryan S. is a guest for his last name.
Giving his best, Ryan S.
Welcome in, sir.
Welcome to be here, sir.
Thank you, my friend.
Excellent.
Jacqueline Pelican.
Oh, what?
Is that right?
I hope that's right.
Is that right? I mean, it's spelled really interestingly. Peloquin. Jacqueline Pelican.
Awesome.
I don't think it's Pelican. Peliquin?
Could be Peliquin.
Peliquin.
It's French.
Peloquin.
Stanche Franche.
Still with the French, John.
I hope it's Pelican, though, because I love pelicans.
They're my favorite bird.
Jacqueline Pelican. That's probably her name, but we love you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for being a Dogman Whisperer. You get a howl. Ghost Crow. That's an interesting name. Welcome to be here, Ghost Crow.
That is cool.
Ghost Crow. Awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
That is
very cool name.
Especially for the season.
Benjamin Blackmore, hello.
Oh,
Benjamin Blackmore. That's definitely an actor
that's
name.
an assassin's name.
Yes.
Or a warlock.
Harry Potter's cousin, maybe.
Benjamin Blackmore. That's pretty cool.
He's got some sort of dark secret in his cupboard.
No, that's definitely an actor.
Benjamin Blackmore.
I'm going warlock.
Could be both.
The actor warlock.
Could be a warlock actor.
Excellent. Yes.
A warlock actor.
Gets every role he wants.
Thank you to be here, Benjamin.
Yes.
But we do have another Dogman coming in who dedicated her supportage for a whole year as a Dogman Whisperer.
Oh, wow.
Elise Willis.
Thank
Welcome
you, Elise.
to be here. Come on down, you Dogman.
Willis, you join us in the hole.
Yes. Oh, John, you'll like this. Another Skylar is here.
There we go.
Is this the same one?
It's a
Skylar's friend?
Different name, different email.
Another chance to rhyme the Skylar.
Skylar.
You had time to think about this.
Skylar.
You got to really try her hard.
Oh gosh, that was terrible.
It's bad.
I don't know.
Skylar will file her taxes
Okay.
when the time comes.
Thank you, Skylar. We love you just as much as the other Skylar.
Thank you to be here, Skylar. Arlo is a Dogman Whisperer. An interesting name.
Oh, that's a cool name. Old school.
Arlo. I've heard that before.
Really? That is interesting. Arlo.
It's rare.
Arlo, I feel like should be a jazz musician or something.
Reminds me of that great dog animated film. What's that? The Husky. The movie with the Husky. The cartoon dog. It sounds like that.
Balto?
Balto.
That does not sound like Arlo.
I guess not. That's totally different.
Comes from the German word for hill.
Oh, that's like our name. Berg. Our grandfather said.
Yeah.
It means mountain.
Arlo in Old English means fortified hill.
It's a good name. A good, solid, sturdy sir. Welcome in, Arlo.
Can you imagine being called Fortified Hill? That was your name. Hey, Fortified Hill, you want to go out for a beer?
What about our last name? Hey, Practice Apprentice. What are you doing for lunch today?
Practiced Apprentice. Hey, to hit the mark. You want to come out for a drink?
Hey, to hit the mark. No one knows what we're talking about.
Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you, Arlo. Thank you for being a Dogman Whisperer. You rock. Julio Ramirez is another furry friend, a Dogman Whisperer in the hole.
Awesome.
Julio.
You are indeed Julio, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You Julio. And finally, to wrap up today's thank yous, we have another year pledge of a Dogman Whisperer, Stacy Ramsey.
All right.
Oh, man.
Stacy, you sweetheart.
Ramsey.
Ramming it into the belief hole.
Give her a howl. Give her a howl. She's howling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
She is a tremendous addition to the whole.
Yes.
Tremendous.
The best. One of the best.
I dream of Ramses.
I dream of Ramses.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you for making the whole special.
Yes.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the expansion for more crazy tales of supernatural strangeness.
Have a wonderful evening.
Oh, and look forward to Halloween.
Yes.
Get in the spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, that was weird. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
On Amen.
Amen Ra.
Unbelievable. We have to do it every time.
We don't have to do it every time.
All right, I guess we'll do it now.
Okay.
On
Belief.
Belief hole.
Bye-bye.